Well, I hope that you've had a good day today. I don't think that we have any announcements tonight, but as always, we do want to let you know that if you are sick or you're hurting in any way, we really would like to know about that. And we want to pray for you specifically in that area, but we are praying for you in a general way every single day. I had to think for a second. We're in Job chapter 11 tonight. Job chapter 11. You'll remember that we were in Job chapter 10 last week, and Job chapter 10 starts out with Job saying that he loathes his life, and because he loathes his life, he really has nothing to lose, so he's going to say what he wants to say. He's not going to restrain his speech. He's just going, I guess we would say, to tell it like it is. But then we also see in Job chapter 10 that Job, he wonders if God sees as man sees. In other words, God, when you judge, do you judge as man judges? Because man looks at outward appearances, but man is not able to judge a person's inward motivation. But God is supposed to be able, which we know this, but Job is saying this, God is supposed to be able to judge man's inward motivation. And if God can judge man's inward motivation, then he ought to know that Job's motives are pure. And then he wonders too if his year, how does he say that? Let me see. Yeah, are your days as the days of man, or your years as a man's years? In other words, God, is time running down on you? Do you not have all the time that you could possibly need? Is that why you're throwing everything at me at once? Because if the time runs out, you're just not going to know the reason why I serve you? Is that why? And then in chapter 10, we see that Job has to remind God that he's the potter, and Job is the piece of this masterpiece that the potter has crafted. And he's reminding God, don't break your creation. Okay, sustain your creation, but don't shatter me, because Job is really to the point that he thinks he's getting he can't take any more pain or suffering in his life. But then we get down at the end of Job chapter 10, and Job, we see why he loathes his life. He just wishes that he just died when he was born. He wishes that he would have been just a stillborn, and he could have went straight from his mother's womb to the grave, which might remind us of Job chapter 3. But that gets us to Job chapter 11, and in Job chapter 11, we get Zophar's speech. We haven't heard from Zofaar yet, but we get to hear from Zofaar tonight. We've heard from the other two friends, Eliphaz and Bildad, and you remember that Eliphaz's main position is no one is righteous, and you might remember that Bildad's main position is that God does not pervert justice. But in Job chapter 11, we see what Zofaar wants to argue. So Job chapter 11, starting in verse 1, Then Zophar the Naamathite answered and said, Should a multitude of words go unanswered, and a man full of talk be judged right? A man full of talk. That could be translated that Job is a man of lips. Job is constantly running his mouth. And if Job is constantly running his mouth, Zophar is kind of like scratching his head and thinking, okay, you say that you're innocent, you say you've done nothing wrong, but yet you keep running your mouth. So odds are, Job, you have done something wrong. Now, this really gets at the idea, it gets at the idea that you did not want to be called a man of lips, because your lips are the means by which you speak. And when our words are very powerful, we see that in James chapter 3. So if we wanted to use New Testament language here, he would be cautioning Job to watch his tongue. Our tongues cannot be tamed, is what we read about in James chapter 3. Job, you're a man of lips. Shall a multitude of words go unanswered? Should your babble silence men? Now we saw that in the ancient world you solved disputes in primarily two ways. Wrestling was one way, and you could take a person to court. A person won their case in court. Remember, we talked about this several lessons ago. The way a person won their case was they argued their points so convincingly that they reduced the other person to silence. So Zofaar is saying, Job, all these words that you keep using that are really empty and they're useless anyway, Job, but do you think that you're going to get people not to be able to say anything else about what you're saying? Because if that's the case, Job, I have something to tell you, and if I have something to tell you, you haven't reduced everyone to silence, and if you haven't reduced everyone to silence, you really haven't proven your case. And when you mock, shall no one shame you? Job, should people not say anything when you use the words that you're in fact using right now, Job? Job is using words that are pretty harsh, and he's saying some things about God that Zofaar does not agree with at all. And in fact, his speech is somewhat impious at times. I think Zofaar would be okay in saying that. But Zofaar is saying, I'm going to speak up. I have something to say to you. He says in verse 4, for you say my doctrine is pure. Now, Bildad, when he argued that God does not pervert justice, he encouraged Job to go back to the traditions of the fathers, because the fathers had, besides God having the highest form of wisdom, they had the next highest form of wisdom. He tells Job, go back to that wisdom. It might help you with your situation. Well, Zofaar has heard up until this point Job saying that my doctrine, those beliefs handed down, those traditions handed down by the fathers, that they are pure. He says, and I am clean in God's eyes. Now, maybe we think so far in reading the book of Job that Job seems to be getting at the idea that he is sinless, but that's actually not the case. Job never says that he is sinless. What Job is arguing is that he doesn't deserve the punishment that he's going through. Zofaar has misunderstood what Job has been arguing. He says in verse 5, but oh, that God would speak and open his lips to you. Job, you keep running your mouth. But let me tell you, you keep wanting to go to court with God, Job. You keep wanting to question God, but let me tell you, if God opened his mouth, do you know what would happen? Do you know what you're asking, Job? And that he would tell you the secrets of wisdom. What are these secrets of wisdom? You might remember in an Old Testament verse, a lot of people use it, his thoughts and his ways are higher than our thoughts and our ways. God has wisdom and knowledge that human beings just aren't able to understand, and they'll never be able to understand because our minds just can't process it, just can't understand it. The secrets of wisdom. There's some things God knows that humans just don't know and never will be able to know. He then says, for he is manifold in understanding. There might be an idea that wisdom is twofold. Like you have these revealed things and you have these hidden things. We as humans can understand some things about God, but we definitely can't understand everything about God. There's some things that only God understands. There's some things that are only reserved for God to understand. Humans are just incapable of understanding those types of things. Well, that might add to the idea of the secrets of wisdom, but Zofaar is saying, Job, I really wish God would reveal everything to you, because if God revealed all this wisdom to you, you would understand then. But the reason you don't understand right now is because there's just some things you can't understand. He then says, know then that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. Job, you ought to be thankful and you ought to be rejoicing because you're just not going through everything that you deserve. God could punish you more, Job, but he's not. He's being gracious to you. He's being merciful to you. Verse 7, he asked Job a question. Can you find out the deep things of God? Can you find out the limit of the Almighty? These deep things of God, the limit of the Almighty. These refer back to the secrets of wisdom. No matter how hard a human being tries, they'll never be able to understand those things that are reserved for God only. You know, you could talk to the top Bible scholar in the world, okay? He can't reveal to you the deep things of God. Now, he might think otherwise, but he can't. You might talk to, your favorite preacher. He can't reveal to you the deep things of God. You may talk to, an elder that's been an elder for years and has so much wisdom and has spent time searching the scriptures and spent time living the scriptures out and is very, very wise. They can't reveal to you the deep things of God. You can't research and study and find out the deep things of God. Our human minds are limited. And he says, can you find out the limit of the Almighty? Well, there we go. The furthest boundary, humans are incapable of finding out those things. It is higher than heaven. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol, what can you know? Now, usually in the Bible, the created world is described by 4 dimensions. It's described by height and depth and length and breadth. Okay, well, you have heaven. It's like the highest point, and Sheol, it's like deep in the earth is what the ancient Jews thought. The sea, it's longer than the earth and broader than the sea. What do we learn about God in those verses? Well, what we learn is the created world can't contain God fully. Okay, it's too small to hold God. If he passes through and imprisons and summons the court, who can turn him back? God can go throughout the earth and he can see people that do wicked things. And when he sees the wickedness that people do, he executes judgment. And when God executes judgment, there's nothing that a person could do to change that. That's why we see here, for he knows worthless men. When he sees iniquity, will he not consider it? But a stupid man will get understanding when a wild donkey's colt is born a man. Verse 13, if you prepare your heart, you will stretch out your hands towards him. What advice does Zofaar have for Job? Well, his advice is like the advice that the other 2 friends give him. Job, you can repent. Remember, Eliphaz said, Job, you can repent. Bildad said, Job, you can repent. Zofaar is telling Job, Job, you need to repent. Because verse 12 might be telling us that Job, although you don't have a lot of knowledge and you never will have a lot of knowledge, your only shot is to repent, like verse 13 says. But if you're going to repent, Job, you need to prepare your heart, okay? You need to change your inward attitude. And as a sign of that, you ought to, your palms ought to be lifted up to God, Job. You ought to pray to God. If iniquity is in your hand, put it far away, and let not injustice dwell in your tents. Job, you should raise your hands to God in prayer. Your palms should be up, but make sure that your hands aren't stained with iniquity, because if your hands are stained with iniquity, guess what God is going to notice while you're praying to him? He's going to notice your filthy hands, and that's what he's going to focus on. He's not going to focus on your prayer. He's going to focus on your iniquity. You might remember in the New Testament, lift up holy hands to God. Let not injustice dwell in your tents. Job, get rid of anything in your house that's going to influence you. Surely then you will lift up your face without blemish. Job has lost his dignity. You know, there was once a time when all these people came to Job. They wanted advice from Job. They wanted Job to share his wisdom with them. But then Job lost his social status. When he lost his social status, people didn't come to Job for advice anymore. They came to mock him. They came to add to his affliction. You know, he's at the garbage dump sitting on an ash heap. All these people walk by him and they mock him and they ridicule him. But Job, if you'll repent, you'll be able to lift up your face without blemish. You'll get your dignity back, Job. You will be secure and you will not fear. All that emotional turmoil that you're going through, Job, it'll be fixed. It'll all go away if you just repent. You will forget about your misery. In other words, Job, if you'll repent, a time will come in which you are blessed again. And guess what, Job? You'll be so blessed that you won't even remember the misfortunes that befell you, Job. You won't remember the suffering that you went through. You won't remember, not being able to sleep at night. You won't remember scraping your boils with a potsherd. Job, you won't remember those things. You'll forget about it. You will remember it as waters that have passed. And your life will be brighter than the noonday. Its darkness will be like the morning, Joe. You'll get your joy back. You will feel secure because there is hope. That's true for us. When we have hope, we have security. Our hope gives us our security. You will look around and take your rest in security. You will lie down, and none will make you afraid. Many will court your favor, but the eyes of the wicked will fail. All way of escape will be lost to them, and their hope is to breathe their last. Notice how Zofaar describes the wicked, which if Job doesn't repent, he will be classified. I think Zofaar would be fine as classifying him as wicked. They have no reason to live because their eyes grow dim. Life isn't joyous anymore. They don't have a way of escape when things get bad. There's no one to run to. There's no one or anything to find security in. And they have no hope, really. Their only hope is to breathe their last. Job, you need to repent. And you need to start thinking about what you're saying. That's what Zofaar has to tell Job in Job chapter 11. Next week we'll hear Job's reply to what Zofaar has just said in Job chapter 12. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I can't wait to see everybody Sunday. God bless.